Hello, ladies and gents. Music legend / Grundleberry here, and I am back with a new series that I'm starting, I guess, on this channel called Rapid Fire Reviews. Other people have done this, obviously. It's not a new concept. Essentially, what I'll be doing is reviewing 3 albums or so that I missed in the last month and a half or 2-month period. Albums I wanted to review, albums that I just didn't have the time to because of other videos, or I was just busy. This past month I was incredibly busy, November and October, and these are a few albums from the past month and a half, 2 months that I really wanted to review, either because of controversy or them being really good, or me just liking the creator for previous content, as we see with these 3 albums. Today's 3 albums are going to be Dummy Boy by Tekashi 6ix9ine, which was released earlier this week. Obviously a pretty controversial release date and release, so I'll talk about that. The second one on here is Ballads 1 by Joji. That was released in mid-October or late October, so not a super long time ago, about a month and a half or so ago. And then Daughter's album, You Won't Get What You Want, which was released at the end of October, beginning of November, around that time. I think it was the 26th. But I'll be talking about each of these albums in that order: Dummy Boy, Ballads 1, and then the Daughter's album. So if you have any specific one you want to hear me talk about, there will be timestamps in the description below. I'll put where I start talking about Dummy Boy, start talking about Ballads 1, and then start talking about the Daughter's album. Keep in mind, this is my personal opinion. If you like or dislike these albums, let me know in the comments section below. I put a lot of effort into these videos, so please don't dislike, please don't hate me. Again, this is just my opinion. Alright, so let's get things started. First of the rapid fire reviews, I'm going to be reviewing Tekashi 6ix9ine's new album, Dummy Boy, which personally, just to talk a little bit about it before I get into the tracks I liked, didn't like, and my final score, I'm going to say this wasn't the best thing I've heard this year. Actually, it was not good at all. There were, however, some things that I thought were really good about it, certain tracks that I was not expecting to be as good as they were, and I will say that this album did exceed my expectations on what Tekashi could make, because, to be honest, until this album, I kind of treated him as a meme, because that's kind of the stats he had on the internet, but there are some actually good songs on this album. I will give him the benefit of the doubt, somewhat because of the help of some of the features being artists that are really relevant and big, but partially just because the different sound change. But so starting off with the tracks, getting into it that I liked, the first real track on the track list that I thought was very good was Kika featuring Tory Lanez. Tory Lanez is a pretty good rapper from what I've heard from him. He was in a beef with Joyner Lucas that was pretty good. I don't really care for Joyner Lucas, despite like everybody else. Like, I just don't know what it is about him, but like I don't know. I don't really care about that whole beef, but I knew who he was mainly because of that, and I listened to some of his music, and he's actually quite good. And he adds a lot to this song because he's more of a flow-based, kind of more of a lyrical rapper, definitely more than 6ix9ine is. And I think 6ix9ine's delivery on this track is actually okay. He doesn't sound terrible. The auto-tune helps a bit, but there's not as much on that as on other tracks. And I also like the backing instrumental. The beat is kind of very tropical and bubbly, which is kind of cool. It sounds a little bit like BB, where it has kind of a bit of a tropical kind of influence, but I like that about it. That's one of the things I find pretty good about it. And the next track, the following track, Mama, which features Nicki Minaj and Kanye West, that was another track that I was hoping would be possibly good, because Kanye can really have some good stuff when he's at his peak, and Nicki Minaj is not a good artist by any means in my opinion, but she does have some good features on other songs, and songs she's done with Kanye and 6ix9ine to date have actually been pretty decent. But Mama definitely did exceed my expectations. I can see it as a radio hit. It's not, I feel like if they clean it up a bit, they take some stuff out, and I think it's pretty good, because 6ix9ine's delivery is clean. It's not his yelling style, and Kanye's verse is pretty good. Nicki Minaj's verse is pretty good. They probably have better verses than he does, I'd say. They kind of carry the song for him. But I can see this song blowing up, and it already is starting to, and it's not bad at all. And then skipping forward a bit, on track 9, Kanga, which is featuring Kanye. This, in my opinion, is probably the strongest track on the album. partially because of the feature and also partially because of the switch off every couple lines between 6ix9ine and Kanye. It actually works like decently well on this track, which I was surprised by. Kanye also kind of what am I talking about? He kind of like reflects back on some old lyrics on songs like Blood on the Leaves or Gold Digger that are talking about like that, like a woman taking money and stuff like that, and that's being used, and that's kind of what this song is about as well. And 6ix9ine switch off, he has that kind of classic yell style and a little bit of that auto-tune style, so his delivery's not bad. He actually has some flow, which is shocking, and I thought the beat was also very good too. And the next track, FIFA, featuring Gunna, track 10, is probably the closest thing to actual lyricism you'll find on this entire project. What you get with FIFA is a track essentially about 6ix9ine's issues with the feds, the law, as he says, in his personal and just his personal life. You know, how he's blowing up and how he's having a lot of mishaps as he is in prison right now, as we speak. But he kind of talks and speaks on that, and it's actually not bad, and it's a little bit, it feels personal. It feels like he actually took the time to put that together, and he does feel passionate. And Gunna has a subpar feature. It's nothing spectacular. He's a decent artist. I don't think he's amazing, but he's got some good stuff in his separate career as well. And then track 11 is also pretty good. That's Tati, that featuring DJ Spin King, but that song came out way back in like March or April on World Star, and that song blew up. And I actually have to say, out of all the 6ix9ine songs I've heard, which is almost every one of them, I'd have to say this is probably the most replayable. His energy on the track is actually really good. His yell rap style works with this, and the beat is very intense. The music video also is very intense, and yeah, and now we're gonna get into things I didn't like, which, let's just say, there's a lot of issues with this project. Starting with track 7 and 8 are really the biggest, 6, 7, and 8 are really the three biggest issues I have with this. Waka featuring A Boogie with the Hoodie. You know, A Boogie has some good songs. Drowning's really good, but he's not as big as he was last year. He sings on this, and it does not sound good at all. And 6ix9ine's delivery is not great either, and that really shows. Thank God it's only like a 2-minute 9-second track, because it drags on. It is not a good track. And also the two Spanish tracks, Bebe and Mala, or BB Mala, featuring Anuel AA. Anuel AA is actually a massive artist in a lot of Hispanic countries, and that's kind of cool that, you know, he's embracing, 6ix9ine is embracing his Mexican heritage and having some Spanish-speaking tracks, but the auto-tune on his voice sounds like absolute ass. Like, I hate to swear in this review, but it does not sound good at all. There's just something about it that it makes his voice sound really pitchy and really squeaky, and it doesn't work with that tough guy image that he's tried to put on. And same with Mala, you get that same thing. And then skip to 12 and 13, Dummy and Wando, and those aren't really that good either. They're just kind of subpar tracks. TikTok's subpar. For the most part, everything here is either subpar or bad, and there's a few things that are good, I will say. So looking at this score-wise, I think the fact that 6ix9ine is in prison kind of takes away from this album. I feel like less people are drawn to it, but I will say it is listenable, casually, if you want to just throw some of the songs on, but it's not like the kind of album that you're going to consistently play over and over again for years to come. I don't really get that from it. It doesn't really come across to me as that kind of album. It's better than his debut mixtape. I think there's better content. I think it varies in its sound, and it's better. But as a score-wise, I'd give this a 4 out of 10. I think that's pretty fair, seeing as there are some actually good songs, and he definitely has improved. Depending on his prison sentence, which could be a really long time, could be till next September, we'll see if he can improve from this, but this does show that he could possibly become a fully fleshed out and maybe a better flow-based rapper in the future. But this, for now, this album is just a 4 out of 10. It's a little bit below average. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. So yeah, that's really all I got about this. Alright, the next album I'm going to be talking about is Ballads 1 by Joji. Now, personally, I was introduced to Joji from before he really got serious with his music. And before Joji was Joji, obviously he was the channel creator behind TV Filthy Frank, as well as the Disaster Music channel, and I knew him for those videos because I love videos like that. His really popular collabs with Max Mofo and iDubbbz. He's kind of a YouTube sensation still and will always be remembered as one of the most iconic YouTube channels out there. But Joji always had a passion for music, and he would often release side projects and little EPs here and there and little mixtapes, and I guess you could say mixtapes, kind of stuff to the side, like the Chloe Burbank project and songs like World Star Money that he would release that people really liked. In fact, on the track Fried Noodles, which was on his Pink Season album, he actually, at the end of it, references people saying, "We want real Joji music," and ironically, a year after the release of that, nowadays, from 2017 to 2018, Joji's pretty much fully committed to this musical side of himself. So he's always really had his toes in the water with making music, and I really am glad he kind of chose to do that, because medically he couldn't carry on Filthy Frank. And this album I genuinely think is a pretty good debut project. It was better than I was expecting. Not amazing, but a pretty decent project, and pretty thorough for the most part. Really looking at the track list, the only tracks that to start with the bad, I'm not going to go track by track with this one because it's not a brand new album and it's not like fresh like Dummy Boy is. But really looking at the track list, which I have pulled up, the only tracks that I really didn't care for on this were I'll See You in 40 and Why Am I Still in LA. Mainly because those were two of the longest tracks on here, and they felt kind of drawn out, to be brutally honest, and there wasn't really much on them that I kind of felt like, oh, this is really good. Like, there just wasn't much for really working for them. They just felt pretty average. And then R.I.P. as well, featuring Trippie Redd, and that's mainly just because this didn't really feel like a Joji track. It felt like a Trippie Redd track. I mean, Trippie really took the reins on this track, and he really delivered, and I think he did a great job on this, but Joji didn't really do much, and he actually had less of an input and was really on this track less than Trippie Redd. In some ways, I consider this a Trippie Redd song, but yeah, it's alright. You know, Trippie sounds pretty good. His classic kind of yelpy kind of vocal style there. You know, you get that from him. And Joji, you get his classic sound as well, but Joji doesn't do a lot. He sets it up nicely for Trippie, and that's just kind of how it is. But some tracks I loved on this thing, and there's a good amount that I really did. The first track that I really loved on here was Yeah Right. This was released back in February, and I loved this song the first time I heard it. I thought it was really kind of catchy. Not a lot to it. It's super simplistic, and the instrumental is just comprised of a lot of different sounds put together of different household objects and stuff like that, kind of in that classic Joji beat making style. And I feel like this song, in a way, looking at the album as a whole, almost kind of would have worked better on his EP last year, but I do think this is still a great song. A couple other songs that were kind of surprising to me, because most of Joji's tracks are very emotionally impactful and almost like tear-jerking kind of ballad, as the name states, style tracks. But the tracks No Fun and Can't Get Over You were two kind of bubbly, happy tracks that I really found really pleasant, to be honest. Can't Get Over You had a nice vocal delivery on the verse. I didn't really care for the vocals on the chorus, but the light kind of bubbly kind of almost raindrop kind of style of beat, I think really worked to the advantage of this track. And I think Joji utilized that well. He sounded really good over it. His vocal verse were really nice. I like that. I kind of like the backing, clapping, and stuff like that. The music video was also pretty goofy. It kind of gave me some Filthy Frank vibes, which is always nice. And then on the track No Fun, which is just about chilling and having a good time with friends, and a lot of people, including me, I just like to think of this song as like a dedication to like Max Mofo and iDubbbz. It probably isn't, but there's even a line on it saying "You look good in green," which references iDubbbz's iconic green alien character, so just saying, could be about them. And then a couple other tracks I really loved on here. 2, 3, and 4 are all straight great tracks in a row. Slow Dancing in the Dark is a fantastic ballad track. The vocal delivery is excellent. It's probably the best Joji has ever sounded. I remember when this dropped, everyone was saying this is it, this is gonna blow him up, and it really did become a pretty popular track. I think it's sitting at like 29, 28 mil views on YouTube or something, which is really crazy, and I'm glad Joji's doing well, and this is a great track. The next track, Test Drive, there is another really good track. It's a very chill track, but it has a very melodic vocal delivery from Joji. Like, he sounds really good on this one. And Wanted You, which I think has a fantastic instrumental. I love the 80s style electric guitar riff that's implemented in here, and I love that there's like a little guitar solo at the end too. That's so cool. Like, it really is. It's a really chill track, and I like that the music video is kind of set like in a 1980s kind of style movie trailer almost, or scene from a movie. I like that. I think the guitar backing that's on the instrumental is really good as well. And yeah, that's really that album. Overall, I'd have to give the album a 7 out of 10, to be honest. I was thinking it was going to be a lot worse than it was, because the EP was good, but it wasn't fantastic. It was probably a 6 or so. But I'm really glad Joji improved. I'm sure fans of Filthy Frank like this, and I know a lot of people that loved his Filthy Frank stuff have said that they genuinely enjoy this project as well. Alright, so the last album I'm going to be talking about on Rapid Fire Reviews today is the new Daughters album, You Won't Get What You Want. They have been around a decent amount of time, and from what I get, this is kind of a comeback album for them, from what I take it. I had never really heard their music before this, and was mainly drawn to this album because of Anthony Fantano talking about it, and he actually gave it a 10. And also Loudwire and other metal and rock outlets were raving about how good of an album it is, so I figured I'd give it a try. Now, upon initial listen, you should probably know, and I didn't realize this, but it didn't really affect me too much, that this isn't your typical rock album. There's no headbang. There's really not a lot of like headbanging kind of stuff. It's very technical stuff. It's in a way sort of trippy, and it works really well. When I first heard the first track, City Song, I basically just put on the full album and just decided, why don't I just listen to it from start to end, because that's usually what I do with new releases, and I was immediately drawn in by the very ambient and very almost psychedelic feeling that you get from listening to the first track, City Song, immediately in. And essentially, a lot of the backing instrumentals to this album, and I believe this is what you would call, at least I'd call it noise rock, which I think is a thing, but I call it that myself, mainly just because it's a compilation of different sounds and kind of distortion between different instruments, kind of all thrown together and put together. Over that, you have this very trippy vocal delivery and this very chill kind of almost monotone sound that kind of in a way reminded me of Ghost a little bit, just in its very monotone one-note sound. But it works very effectively with having these various sounds in the background. It's not what you'd typically expect from a rock band in this day and age. But it is pretty heavy. I would classify it as a pretty heavy album, especially the tracks The Reason They Hate Me and Satan in the Wait. Satan in the Wait is a 7-minute and 6-second track, which is really long, kind of that classic rock length of a track. And it starts off kind of a little bit slower, but gradually picks up and builds to this really intense kind of feeling where you feel like you're in this track. You feel like it's like you are kind of witnessing what's going on, and there's everything around you. And you really get that feeling from a lot of the tracks on here, but I think Satan in the Wait was really the biggest, in my opinion, track to really do that, and the biggest build. And then Ocean Song as well is a really long track, is at 7 minutes 28 seconds, and is the longest on here. But my favorite track on here is definitely The Reason They Hate Me, mainly because it's, I guess, to me kind of sounds like just a typical rock track, but it has this style that they have of having the different ambient sounds in the background with it, and I think that again works really well for the atmosphere of it. Atmospherically, it feels like a great track, and I like that on this track the vocal delivery kind of switches up a little bit. It stays in that kind of monotone sound, but there's some inflections here and there, and I just think it's a pretty solid track for the most part. I also like the riffs on it, and the drum beats are pretty consistent as well. But just at the album as a whole, it's kind of really hard to talk about because there's not like lyrically and musically, you just get so absorbed in listening to it, and I think that the listening experience will take people by surprise. It's not what you'd expect for a rock album, and it may seem like you might think, like I did going in, that this is just a normal rock project. But this, in reality, is a really intense musical experience. I say experience because this is a really excellent album. I wouldn't give it a 10 at the level of Fantano, but I would give it a 9 just because of how different it is, how unique it is. And in this day and age where, in my opinion, rock music this year has been relatively weak compared to past years, and this year in particular, there has been a lot of albums that didn't impress me. Hearing this album, I was very impressed by it. Just the general ambience of it, the sounds, the mixing on it, and even the vocal delivery, although it was pretty consistently monotone, was really good. A lot of people would say, and Fantano spoke briefly about this, that, oh, this sounds like something you could put together on your own. This isn't hard to make. This is just uninspired, boring music. But I kind of just see it as masterclass work in mixing and production and putting different sounds together to make these really great instrumentals that work oh so well. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that album. It is a great project, and to be honest, I'm considering putting it in my top 10 list of the year because it's up there for me. It's not my favorite rock album. That'd probably be the new Judas Priest album, Firepower. I thought that was great. I also liked Ghost's new album, Prequel. Breaking Benjamin's new album was good as well, but this was a very solid album, and I'd highly recommend listening to it. But just going in, keep that mentality that you might not like it. It kind of it suits your interest, you know? It's one of those albums. So yeah, if you like this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to be doing a lot of videos in the coming weeks. I'm going to be doing a top 10 albums of the year, top 10 worst albums of the year, my favorite songs of the year, and also a couple rankings as well. I'm going to be trying to put out a lot more content in this month because December is such a big month for music. It's the end of the year, time to rally everything up, round it all up, and formulate lists. I've been working on my top 10 albums of the year list. There's again been a lot of good albums recently, now including JID's new album, DiCaprio 2, that I've got to put those in the comparison with other albums, and it's been very tough because there's been a lot of great music this year, but I think I finally have that top 10 list. So keep on, if you want to see that, that'll probably be coming around New Year's. I'm going to make the video in advance and then release it on New Year's Eve. I'll keep it unlisted and then make it public for that video. So yeah, definitely do that. If you want to follow my other social media, my Instagram will be below. That is GrundleberryRJ. I post things mainly about music, but a wide variety of other things too, if you're interested in that. And please subscribe to the channel if you like this and you want to see more of my reviews. I've done a ton of other reviews on here. I'm going to be doing a lot more reviews of different albums, of different genres as well. As the school bell says, it's time to be over with. So peace, and have a good one.